Welcome to the online lecture series on Macbeth. Today we are going to discuss in detail the banquet scene, that is the fourth scene of the third act of the play. This scene takes place just after the murder of Banquet in the hands of the murderers appointed by Macbeth. And in the middle of this scene, the ghost of Banquet would appear, and his sudden appearance will destabilize Macbeth's mental cool, his mental strength, and the frailty, the weakness of his personality will be revealed in front of the assembly of lords and courtiers who have gathered to attend the banquet. The scene begins like this. The stage direction is a banquet prepared. Enter Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, Ross, Lennox, lords and attendants. Macbeth, at the very beginning, requests very humbly all the courtiers to be seated according to their respective dignities, according to their respective positions in his court. He says, "You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last, the hearty welcome." So he very cordially welcomes all the courtiers who have assembled there and requests them to take their own seats according to their positions. The lords in reply thank Macbeth, saying, "Thanks to your majesty." Then Macbeth puts on further disguise of humility and innocence by saying, "Ourselves will mingle with society and play the humble host." So he says that he would not distance himself from the other courtiers by remaining in his kingly stature. Rather, he will be very much sociable, he will mingle, he will be one with the society of courtiers, and will play the part of the very humble, the very ordinary and very decorous host. "Our hostess keeps her state, but in best time we will require her welcome." So that is an indirect hint by Macbeth to his wife, to Lady Macbeth, to address the gathering of courtiers and welcome them to the banquet. Here, require means request. That our hostess, Lady Macbeth, is present here. She is keeping her own seat. She is seated on her own seat, and in due time we will request her to welcome our guests. On hearing that, Lady Macbeth tells her husband, "Pronounce it for me, sir, to all our friends. For my heart speaks they are welcome." Lady Macbeth asks Macbeth to pronounce, to utter the welcoming words on her behalf, because in her heart she bears welcome to all the guests. Then there is a stage direction of the appearance of the first murderer at the door, but none but Macbeth is able to see him. None of the guests can see the murderer. He is concealed by the door. And Macbeth continues to speak to the guests. "See, they encounter thee with their heart's thanks." That is addressed to Lady Macbeth, whom Macbeth requests to see that the guests are receiving the welcoming words of Lady Macbeth narrated by him with their vote of thanks. Then he says, "Both sides are even. Here I will sit in the midst, be large in mirth, anon we will drink a measure, the table round." So Macbeth says, both sides are even. That means that the weight of our welcome note, the weight, the importance of our welcoming, the importance of our invitation is equaled, is paralleled by the equal amount of thanks, the equal amount of gratitude shown by our guests. And I myself shall take a seat in the midst. I shall not be sitting here as the king and aloof and detached from the rest of the company, but I will sit among them. Be large in mirth, enjoy yourselves to the fullest. Anon will drink a measure the table round, and very shortly we will drink wine round the table. The wine will be served round the table so that everybody can have his or her share. Then Macbeth approaches the door as he notices the murderer there, and having approached the door, he tells the murderer, "There's blood upon thy face." So Macbeth encounters the murderer and he sees that the face of the murderer is smeared with blood. The murderer replies, "'Tis Banquo's then, that if there is blood on my face, it must be that of Banquo, whom I have killed." Then Macbeth inquires, "'Tis better thee..." First, before inquiring, he tells, "'Tis better thee without than he within," which means that it is better that you are standing outside my hall, you are standing outside my room, than the living presence of Banquo inside, within the room itself. And then he inquires whether the business of killing Banquo is accomplished. Is he dispatched? That means, is he properly killed? Has he been properly murdered? The murderer replies, "My lord, his throat is cut. That I did for him." So the murderer replies in a very tacit and slightly ironical tone that I only cut his throat. That was the business that I was assigned with. Then Macbeth appreciates the murderer, saying, "Thou art the best of the cutthroats." So you are one of the best murderers, you are one of the best throat cutters. Yet he is good that did the like for Fleance. But I will also like to appreciate the other murderer who did the like, who cut the throat of Fleance, who is Banquo's son. If thou didst it, thou art the nonpareil, and if you yourself committed both the murders, if you yourself killed both the father and the son, then you are incomparable, you are matchless, you do not have any other parallel among the murderers. Then the murderer, in an apologetic tone, says, "Most royal sir, Fleance escaped." So he breaks the bad news to Macbeth, saying that Fleance has been able to escape. They were unable to kill Fleance. Macbeth says, "Then comes my feet again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air, but now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound into saucy doubts and fears. But Banquo's safe." So, a feeling of claustrophobia comes upon Macbeth. On hearing the news of Fleance's escape, Macbeth says that now again I have reasons to be unhappy. Now again I have reasons to be ill, to be sick, mentally at least. Otherwise, I had else been perfect. I would have been perfect. My attainment of kingship, my sovereign power as the king would otherwise have been perfect, flawless, if you could eliminate both Banquo and his son, then my position of the king, then my sovereign power as the king would have been as stolid, as sound and as strong as a piece of rock, and at the same time as clean as a piece of white marble. As broad and general as the case in air, my sovereign power would have no bounds, would have no limits. My sovereign power would have been as free and as general as the air that surrounds us, if you could murder Fleance along with his father. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound into saucy doubts and fears. But now dirty thoughts, dirty fears, doubts seem to choke me, they seem to suffocate me. I feel myself to be cabined, cribbed, to be confined, to be crushed under the heavy weight of doubts and fears, as you failed to kill Fleance. Then he asks, he wants to reaffirm the news of Banquo's death. But Banquo's safe, was the killing of Banquo safe and successful without any flaw? The murderer replies, "Aye, my good lord, yes, my sir." Safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least death to nature. So the murderer replies affirmatively. He says that Banquo's killing has been successful and flawless. His body is lying under a ditch with at least 20 deep wounds on his head. Gashes are wounds. Gash is an archaic term for wound. So there are at least 20 deep, very profound cuts or wounds on his head, which successfully affirm the possibility of his death as per the natural law. The least death to nature means no human being can be alive as per natural law with 20 deep wounds on his head. Then Macbeth says, "Thanks for that. There the grown serpent lies, the worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present." Here Macbeth compares Banquo very derogatorily to a serpent. He says that the grown serpent, the adult snake, is lying dead. But the worm, the offspring, the child, or the young snake, that refers to Fleance, Banquo's son, the worm that's fled, the young snake that has escaped our clutches, has in his nature, has in his character, the same qualities of his father, which will gather the venom of vengeance in due course of time. Hath nature that in time will venom breed, no teeth for the present. Though the young snake that has fled, though Fleance who has fled, who has escaped us, does not have enough strength to avenge us at present, but in due course of time he will be able to gather enough power of vengeance to avenge the murder of his father. That is what he means to say here. Get thee gone, tomorrow we will hear ourselves again. So he tells the murderer to depart for the time being, and he says that on the next day they will have further discussions. Now, having said that, he leaves the murderer, and meanwhile Lady Macbeth, who has noticed that Macbeth is not properly attending to his guests, tells him to do so. Lady Macbeth urges Macbeth to be more attentive to his guests who might think it indecorous for the host, for Macbeth. So Lady Macbeth says, "My royal lord, you do not give the cheer. The feast is sold that is not often vouched. While 'tis a-making, 'tis given with welcome. To feed were best at home. From thence the sauce to meat is ceremony. Meeting were bare without it." So Lady Macbeth says that, "My lord, dear sir, you are not properly cheering up the company. You are not properly welcoming your guests. And a feast or a party that is not frequently cheered up by the host seems to have been sold. The guests might think that they have come to eat food at their own expenses if they are not frequently cheered up and welcomed by their host. To feed were best at home, from thence the sauce to meat is ceremony." One could have easily eaten their dinner at their own houses, at their own home. But one thinks a feast or a party ceremonious just because in a feast or in a ceremonial dinner one has the welcoming, encouraging words from the host, which adds to the taste of the food. Then Macbeth thanks Lady Macbeth for reminding him of his duty. He calls her "sweet remembrancer." You are a remembrancer, you are a reminder who gives me the reminder of my duties in a very sweet and tender manner. Now good digestion wait on appetite and health on both. So he tries to cheer up the gathering by saying this. These are the words of encouragement to the party assembled at the banquet. Then Lennox courteously requests Macbeth to take his seat at the table. "May it please your highness sit." And just at that moment, the stage direction says that the ghost of Banquet enters and sits on Macbeth's place, sits on the particular stool, the particular seat which was reserved for Macbeth is taken by Banquo's ghost. There is a strong dramatic irony in the following lines. Here Macbeth says, Macbeth is unaware of the deep irony that is inherent in his following speech. He says, "Here had we now our country's honor roofed, were the graced person of our Banquo present." Now Macbeth knows that Banquo is dead, he is no more alive, but in order to deceive the company, in order to put on an innocent put on a mask of innocence on his face, he tells the gathering that it would be a happier banquet for all of us. It would have been a greater honor for all of us if we had Banquo amid us. If we had Banquo with us, we would think that all the honorable dignitaries of our country have been assembled under one single roof, that no one is missing but actually he doesn't intend Banquo to be present in the banquet. Who may I rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance? And this relative clause actually applies to Banquo. And Macbeth says that I would rather challenge, I would rather blame Banquo of unkindness, which he has shown towards me by being absent from such a grand banquet, than pity for mischance. I can believe that he is absent by some mischance, by mistake or by some sudden inadvertent failure. But I cannot pity him for his inadvertent error or his unwilling error. But I would rather like to challenge or blame him for his unkindness, in his unkindness that he has shown through his absence in the banquet. Now the dramatic irony involved in these lines is that while Macbeth knows fully well that in spite of his deceptive words, Banquo can never be present there, though he wishes Banquo to be present in the banquet, he knows fully well that Banquo can never be present there. But at the same moment, coinciding with his reference to Banquo, the ghost of Banquo enters and sits on the particular stool reserved for Macbeth. Then Ross says, his absence, sir, lays blame upon his promise, because before going out on a journey, Banquo promised that he would return by evening and attend the banquet. So Ross says that his absence lays blame upon his promise. He failed to fulfill the promise that he made earlier. Please it your highness to grace us with your royal company. Then Ross requests Macbeth to grace their company with his presence, to sit with them and participate in the party, participate in the banquet. But Macbeth takes a casual look at the table and says, the table's full. There is no place left for me to sit. The table's full. Up to this moment, Macbeth has not taken any particular notice of Banquo's ghost as such. He merely sees that all the stools, all the seats are filled up and there is no empty space for him to sit on. Then Lennox says, here is a place reserved, sir. Saying that, Lennox points to the particular stool which all other people see to be empty except Macbeth. It is only Macbeth who can see Banquo's ghost occupying the seat meant for him. Macbeth asks, where? Lennox says, here, my good lord. Then, now after saying here, my good lord, Lennox suddenly notices some awkward change in the facial expression of Macbeth. That is why he says, what is it that moves your highness? What is the matter which is moving, which is disturbing your highness? Now Macbeth is quite enraged. He thinks that someone is playing a prank with him. He cannot yet believe that it could really be Banquo's ghost who has come to the banquet. He thinks that someone of the courtiers is perhaps playing tricks on him. So he asks, which of you have done this? Then all the lords are quite taken aback because they cannot see anything. They cannot see the ghost of Banquo. They altogether ask, what, my good lord? Then Macbeth directly addresses the ghost of Banquo whom he perceives to be shaking his head. Then Macbeth says this is addressed to Banquo's ghost, "Thou canst not say I did it. You cannot blame me of having murdered you. You cannot say that I did this to you. Never shake thy gory locks at me. Do not shake your blood-stained locks, the locks of hair." Gory is another archaic epithet, another archaic adjective, which means smeared with blood or bloody, blood-stained. Do not shake your blood-stained locks at me. Then Ross is very much taken aback, and Ross says to the company, "Gentlemen, rise. His Highness is not well." So Ross thinks that his king is unwell. He is either physically or mentally disturbed, and so he urges all the courtiers to stand up. Now Lady Macbeth tries to pacify the company because being a very intelligent woman, Lady Macbeth senses danger, that all the other courtiers might suspect Macbeth of having done something unusual. So Lady Macbeth tries to pacify them, saying, "Sit, worthy friends, my lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth." So she says that this is very normal. You do not have anything to be worried about. My husband is very often, very frequently, he behaves in this manner, and this has been a common trait of his character right from his childhood. Pray you, keep seat. I request you to be seated. The feat is momentary. This feat, this sudden state of instability, this sudden state of agitation is momentary. It is temporary. It will go soon. Upon a thought, he will again be well. Within a few moments, within a very short span of time, he will again be normal. If you note him, you shall offend him and extend his passion. If you take much note of him, if you pay much attention to him, you will agitate him, and his passion, his agitation will increase all the more. Feed and regard him not. You continue with your dinner and do not pay much heed to what my husband is doing or saying. Then the last part of her speech, "Are you a man?" is directed to her husband, directed to Macbeth. She challenges Macbeth's manhood. As we have always noted that in Macbeth, manliness or manhood has always been associated with courage, boldness, cruelty, mental and physical strength, and so on. So she questions Macbeth's manliness in his mental instability.